Hey guys, I'm coming back at you with the second part of your notes. We did the bullet characterization guide, and now we're going to do the cartridge characterization guide. This should be page 2 on your guided note sheet, and let's get into it. So the first thing I want you to be aware of on these cartridge casings is a thing called a head stamp. So the head stamp is going to be located at the base of the cartridge, and there's usually going to be a numerical designation that's typically stamped on the base. So if you take a look at this bullet, this is letting you know that it is a 9mm Luger bullet. Okay? This is usually put on by the manufacturer, and of course if you are the forensic investigator at the scene, you're going to want to make a note of these markings that are present on any of the cartridge casings that you examine. The next thing are going to be breech face markings. So breech face marks are made when the cartridge case comes in contact with the breech face. So if you take a look at this picture that I put down here below, here's the firing pin you can see just sticking right out of that hole in the breech face. And the actual back that the cartridge is against is the breech face. There's also some other things. There's an extractor and an ejector, and we'll talk about those at the end of the presentation. But the marks on the breech face can come in many different patterns. We have parallel, we have circular, we have smooth, and we have arched. What I would like you to do is take a search on the web and see if you can find pictures of all 4 different types, just so you know what they look like. Just like the head stamp, those breech face marks that are present on the cartridge case are going to need to be documented at the scene. The next thing is going to be firing pins. So firing pins, they're made from a variety of shapes and sizes, and they leave all sorts of different types of marks. When you're doing a comparison like this, what you're looking for is you want to make sure that the marks look like the one from the actual firearm, right? So I told you in the last video that your firearms expert is going to do a test fire. So if you give me a gun from a crime scene and I have the known bullet, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a bullet that is just like the bullet that was found at the crime scene, and I'm going to test fire it out of that particular weapon that either belongs to the suspect or was found at the scene. And then we are going to do a comparison. Because firing pins are so drastically different across the board, you'll want to make sure that the impression looks the same, right? You're trying to do an identification. So as long as it is consistent with the firearm and both of the bullets are consistent when you look at the firing pin marks, then that's all that you need to note. And of course, there are some CSIs that would sketch the markings that you observe on a firing pin and just add it to their case file. So we have another thing right here, which is going to be primer finish. So for primer finish, we typically have 2 different finishes. We have nickel and we have brass. It depends on the manufacturer, and it depends on the type of bullet that they want to put out there, okay? This is all about cosmetics. There are certain manufacturers that like nickel. There are some certain manufacturers that like brass, okay? It's all about what they like. There are a few other exceptions, but I wanted to give you the most popular, so that's why I put up nickel and brass. For the cartridge casings, typically they're going to be in 3 different finishes. You're going to have an aluminum cartridge case, which is this first one right here. I can label them right down below for you. And then we have the one in the middle, which is going to be brass, which is usually the one that's the easiest to tell just because of the color. And then we're going to have nickel plated. This is also a manufacturer's decision, and they will decide what it is that they want to make their cartridge casings out of. The last part of these notes, right, we're basically talking about all of the marks on a potential cartridge casing or bullet that are identifiable. So the other ones, there are the last 3. So the first one are going to be chamber marks. So when a bullet gets fired out of a gun, right, that roughness that's inside of the chamber of the firearm will scratch the outer walls of the cartridge case, and those also can be identified. The second one are going to be ejector marks. So ejector marks are going to happen because there are going to be small marks or indentations on the base of the cartridge case, and it happens when that case is kicked out of the gun by the ejector. The third one is going to be the extractor marks. So the extractor is a small part. Sometimes it looks like a hook, and it's used to remove a cartridge or a cartridge case from the actual firearm, right? So cartridges are a little less, I guess there's a little less material than there are with bullets, but both of these are really important in trying to make an identification of a bullet to a particular gun so we can link it back to a suspect. All right, so that ends the second part of your notes, and hopefully now you guys have a better understanding of how a firearms investigator would take a look at some of these individual characteristics.